Okay. Hey everybody, welcome. This is Niamh McQuillan with our Ripple Out Conversation. And our guest today is Ruth Ann Norton. She's the president and CEO of Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. And they're a national nonprofit dedicated to eliminating lead poisoning and creating healthy homes for all American children. So thank you so much for joining us today, Ruth Ann. I'm really excited about this conversation.
I'm so glad to reconnect with you. It's just a thrill in the middle of all of this craziness that we're living with.
Yeah, it really is. It's a bright spot. So Ruth Ann and I have known each other for about 4 years. We actually probably met about this time 4 years ago when we were campaigning for Hillary Clinton in Philadelphia. Remember that? I remember you walked into the room and you had this really cool Hillary hat on. I'm like, whoa, I think I want to get to know her.
Yeah. So that was an interesting time. I think it was the first day I knew that Hillary wasn't going to win. The difficulties that we had canvassing in West Philadelphia in terms of people not being inspired like I am continually, and was inspired by Hillary, who I've known for 20 some years.
Wow.
But it taught me a lot about how we message and how we engage, but also what people in the world are feeling, right? And her loss, I think, has been both inspiration for lots of action, lots of frustration. But I think good people like yourself have used that as a platform to lift so much good. So we will see where that pays off. I think it has paid off. I've said that to her, that I think it pays off in part of the struggle of changing how we feel about women as leaders, and that especially is true for women, who I think, truthfully, by data, struggle with that issue. But I dig very smart, accomplished, thoughtful, wise women, and Hillary's one of those.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to jump into a question that relates to what you just brought up, and I'm going to ask you about that experience. How did that experience with working with Hillary and the outcome of her campaign impact the work that you do?
Well, I don't know, except for that it made us, had Hillary won, I likely was going to go into the administration. But it made us rethink how we do our work. It reminded me of an approach that we took when Bob Ehrlich was elected governor in Maryland, and lots of community groups really yelled at me because we worked with Bob Ehrlich as well as with William Donald Schaefer, as well as with Martin O'Malley, and in the Glendenning administration of my dear friend Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. The reality is, families who are in need, who have urgent needs, who have needs in front of them, whether caring for their kids with asthma or potential lead hazard, or their seniors, the truth of the matter is that who's sitting in the White House or who's sitting in the governor's house or somewhere else is not a reason to shut down work. And in fact, it's a reason to be better at our work. It's a reason to be better to finding new ways to articulate our work and advance our work. And I think we took that approach. And I'll give you a really good upside of that. When President Obama left office, the funding for the Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Housing was about $170 million a year. Today, the funding for that office being proposed by current administration and Congress is $425 million a year.
Wow.
It proved to us that it's more than just one person. It proved to us that this issue is bipartisan. It proved to us that we can operate without politics on this and have issues that make just driven common sense. But it made us hone our arguments and our work to continue to try to be irrefutable
Mm.
and appeal to how it lifts all boats, right? That kids who can get to a classroom, who are healthy when they get there, who are sleeping through the night because their asthma is not, choking them, and their brains are not damaged by lead, and their families are not in chaos by moving. That the kids themselves are resilient. That helps the education system, the criminal justice system, our health systems, housing stability. It helps property owners and renters. And so I think we have lived in a message of the courage of common sense. And even in all of the chaos, common sense, when backed by data, when backed by tenacity, it has a good chance of moving forward. But you gotta be constant and consistent and build trust in every place you can.
Mm. So I'm hearing a lot of things there, Ruth Ann. One of the things I'm hearing sort of underlying it all is, beneath the common sense is humanity, sort of a sense of humanity of like, what does it take to care for all the people that are in our world? What I'm also hearing there is a core value that prompts your work. What is that core value?
I was raised as Catholic and Baptist coming up. My dad was from Ireland. My mother was from Gastonia, North Carolina. But there was one thing in my every other week in the Catholic Church that always stuck with me, which was I can't remember, you may tell me better, the Pope who said that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, right? And I think that is a value for me that is just ingrained. But I look at things so as a kid, I tested out well as an engineer, right? I would go off the charts on the California Achievement Test about it being, and I think I'd look at the world in some ways to say, we want to level the playing field. We want every person who has time to walk this earth to succeed, because we're all better. That just makes sense to me. And we cannot do it by disenfranchising, disinvesting, with bigotry, with hatred, with racism, with unjust policies. But instead, if we give the opportunity for a kid, a family, a senior to wake up in the day, that nothing where they live is hurting them, holding them back, but is giving them the baseline of safety, health, and security. We all have resiliency, and we all have intellect, and we all have instincts, that if we don't crowd the world with the other stuff of continually undermining people, we'll all be okay. But I think it comes from my own experience, and it comes from that set of beliefs that I think I got from my parents, truly, and people say that, but I think I did. And I would tell you, I don't think all my siblings got that set of beliefs. We all are incredibly different in our beliefs. Doesn't make mine right, but I'm really driven when something is unjust or wrong, and I'm a little tenacious about that.
So who do you have to be to reach your goal? I just heard you say tenacious. Who else do you have to be? As a woman, you've been very successful in growing your nonprofit. You've shared the numbers with me before. So not only do you have the barriers of the work that you're doing, which is taking care of our neediest people often, you're also a woman in that world. So who do you have to be in order to be able to reach this goal of your work?
So I believe in a couple of things, right? I believe in consistency and constancy. I believe that if what you are doing is authentic and real, it does rise up. But it doesn't necessarily rise up unless you fight like hell for it sometimes. I'm coming off of a week where I had to fight with the SBA and my bank and everything else just to get our organization into the Paycheck Protection Program. So some of that came out this week. I tend to think, I recognize that it's my own privilege that comes out, that I tend to think that it's okay if I call the CEO or COO of an organization, no matter who they are, that I sit down with congressmen and presidents and governors and mayors, and I never get lost in the things that often keep people from having those connections. So I feel that if that's what is called for and that's what's needed, that's what should be done. Mm-hmm. And I really think that confidence to do that comes from the authentically good, value-driven, and real work that we're doing. So it's easy to talk about because it's real, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not selling a message that is even kind of closely debatable. Mm-hmm. And I am over 27 years of doing the work. I pretty much know what I'm talking about, so the confidence in that. But I think courage is really important. I think common sense is important. But I think being focused on end goal and not backing down and saying, well, I can't call the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation because I need somebody to tell me or know, or gee, I just don't know. Being able to articulate that, be confident about it. And I think women need to have the confidence to own the room. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think part of that comes by how we're built, character, etc. But I think owning the room it's not even really a strategy, but it's the ability to do it. Because I think in critical meetings, if you are equipped with the data and the stories, right? Data with a soul, that there's a human element to what you were talking about, and it's real and it's provable. Mm. And that you're patient in those conversations, you will rise in those meetings. Follow through is critically important, right? All of those things are critically important, or finding, and I think by whatever measure, the success of our organization has come in large part because I'm not afraid of smart people. Mm. I don't fear somebody who's smart. I'm not afraid of somebody who's different, right? I think we get hung up on so many things because we're so afraid of somebody who's different or super smart. And if you have in you that's good and that helps, and that you celebrate that in many ways by figuring out how to work with, promote, and advance that, right? I think you can find a lot of not only success, but in those lonely moments where you make big decisions, or you're right, and all of those things, having that ability to surround yourself with people who have different opinions, who are smarter, who are better looking, who are more charming, who are just better writers, whatever it is, right? And move that all, and just really try to move that all in the same direction. You'll get somewhere, I think.
Ruth Ann, what risks do you have to take to do your work?
There's interesting things when you're dealing with the truth. Sometimes it's hard for people to want to hear it. And people take that as you're accusing them of failure, and you may be telling them that there have been failures. Or you put them in uncomfortable positions, right? Mm-hmm. So, because it may change how they do business. And so I think there is a risk that you have to take that for me is a really hard one, to gird up and say, I may walk out of this and the people I'm dealing with may respect me. We may get something done, but they may choose that they're not going to like me, or that we have social connections that they may not. I may lose friends over some things sometimes. You know, as you get older, you learn how to try to do those things differently. But the thing that, you know, if you think about the younger generation, right, that's coming up, and we were all part of the younger generation at one time coming up, it's exactly that. If you kind of cave to, well, I'm in this social circle, or these folks are my friends, so I'm not going to push as hard, or I'm not going to do something, which is sometimes a problem. And I think leadership is often lonely. We try every kind of way to not make it lonely, but it is lonely at times, right? So I'm leading an organization right now, even in the coronavirus time, to where 90% of the revenue that would normally be coming in for us between March and June is stopped, put on hold, frozen, or has been redirected. And I have 44 employees. My commitment is that none of them have to go on furlough, none of them get fired, none of them get done, right? But I also have to prepare that list that says maybe, depending on what this is, choices, and trying to build everybody in the equation of how we figure this out. People are afraid to do that, even though I have great staff and they've been great to work on these things. You know, those are lonely moments. There's lonely moments when I've said in our life, you know, we had money from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County through the Shriver Center, and they were giving us about $700,000 or $800,000 a year back when my budget was like 1.2, way back in the day. And I found out the source of their money was from the paint companies trying to get out of their accountability on the manufacture of lead-based paint. So I returned the check. That was a lonely decision, and but we were okay, and I knew we would be okay. Or where we've taken a stance before others have. I always refer, and I may have mentioned this in the class that I did with you, I refer to our organization as polar bears. When we feel right about something and we feel knowledgeable and capable, we jump in first, break the ice so others can swim. When we started Green and Healthy Homes coming out of the lead work, I had all sorts of healthy housing people foundations said, that'll never work. Housing organizations don't want to think about health and energy efficiency and weaving it together. And we made the case of why. And now Enterprise and LISC and everybody wants to talk about healthy housing. Energy efficiency for all, founded by the MacArthur Foundation, now supported by the Energy Foundation, now talks about healthy housing as what they're doing. Because GHHI did that, because to some degree I just said, this is where we need to go. So in lots of macro and micro ways, it depends on the belief in what you're doing and the depth of that, that can find you lonely at times. So
I'm hearing so much wisdom behind all of these things that you're sharing with us today, Ruth Ann. And at the heart of this work, what I'm hearing is a really solid belief that the work that you're doing is what needs to be done, and that drives everything. So there's a lot of wisdom that you're passing on to all of the people who are listening and will be listening to this. So I have a final question for you. What wisdom do you have to offer yourself?
Take time for more love, more friendships. Never lose faith in yourself, no matter how hard it gets at times, to be grounded in faith in yourself. I believe that is dire as it is, optimism is the best thing in the world. So I try to strengthen that in me, and I don't know what gift I got, but when I wake up in the morning every day, I'm the happiest person to wake up. If you ever need to call in the middle of the night, I have this reputation as being one tough broad. So I think what I continue to tell myself and live with, and whether it's seen as reality or my reality, I care about my kindness, and I try to nurture that a lot. And when I feel like I have kindness and I have music and I have the ability to write, I'm like the happiest person in the world. Find that space in yourself, and it will get you through a lot of dark days in things that just come from the fact that we are living a life, and with it comes lots of hurt and tragedy and challenges, and to be able to find those things in yourself.
Ruth Ann, thank you so much. Every time we talk, I feel like I've got 1,000 more questions to ask you. And we went on that wonderful walk that time, and I remember thinking the walk wasn't long enough to be able to talk about all the things I wanted to talk about with you. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your insight. I really appreciate it.
Let's do those walks more often.
I would love that.
Take care, stay healthy and safe. All right.
You too.
Love you much. Thanks for the opportunity to do this.
Thank you, Ruth Ann.
Bye.